Welcome to Book Huddle. Today we have Janilee Miles on with us. She's a children's book author that has just this really fun story of why she's creating this series about travel and exploring different areas. So Janilee, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself and share some about why and how these books came to be.
So thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. So the way that this series kind of came about is by my trade, I'm an interior architect, and I actually have traveled kind of the country working on historic buildings, and I preserve and restore them. And I just noticed that there was this great sense of community and ownership by these buildings. And as I've traveled, I've had kind of these experience of wanting, I have two children, and I was just like, I want my children to also feel kind of this sense of community as well. And ironically, last year, my son, he was in second grade. He begged me to go be a volunteer at the school library. And it was so funny. And so I was like, okay, so I would go in every week, and these kids would always come up to me and say, do you have a book on, this city or this place? And there wasn't that many options. And I was kind of surprised by that, actually. And so I then kind of got this creative juice come to me. And I just thought, why not create this series where kids can learn about adventure and explore? And I know with my kids, whenever we travel anywhere, they really love learning and exploring like their surroundings. And so I just thought, why don't we come up with this series of places where kids can, explore? And I actually did a survey with 100 moms and asked with their elementary kids, I was like, where are the places that your kids want to go to? And so the top 3 are the ones that I chose to write my book series on. And this first series is about Yellowstone. And the other part that's kind of fun, so you can kind of see my Mr. Snuggles.
Yes.
That's one of the characters. Amelia is the main character, and Mr. Snuggles is her teddy bear. And where I got that idea from is one time me and my sister were going across country, and she had a 4-year-old little girl, and she has this cute little stuffed giraffe. I'm like, what's that for? She's like, well, I want my daughter to kind of see where we're going. And I just had to laugh because we were putting that giraffe everywhere, like all over the place across, but it made it to where her daughter was able to feel kind of where that interaction where her mom was
and that
going.
connection to the place when she looks back on it, that it's not feeling like a postcard, but I was there.
Yes. And then that way she can say, I hugged the giraffe tonight when we were in Washington, D.C. And then her daughter, when she got the giraffe back, was able to kind of snuggle it. And that's why we called him Mr. Snuggles. And so that's kind of the idea there. And so I wanted kids to, every kid that I know has a special stuffy. And so the stuffies that they have are really important to them. And that's kind of how we introduce the characters. And I have Amelia, who's a little more, pragmatic, but has a big imagination. And then Mr. Snuggles, who's curious and gets in a little bit of mischief, because all kids love a little mischief, I learned.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's so fun. Yes, our family loves to travel and loves to go places. So I could see that being a fun thing for them to share their animal. And you have something coming for this, right? Where their kids can share images like this.
Yes. So I did a pre-launch because the first one, like I mentioned, is in Yellowstone. And when I had done the pre-launch with them, I had a lot of retailers and bookstores that just said, do you have anything where kids can kind of talk about their own explorations? And so I actually came back from it, and I put together this cute little addition to it. And it's basically a travel journal for the kids. And there's little coloring books, and you can have your own passport and where you want to go. But there's places to put their pictures in. It talks about, their favorite foods they might have had. And then what that does is it allows them, and it pairs with the story. So it actually at the beginning is Amelia talks to them, is like, we're excited you joined us. And so they call themselves in the book the adventure buddies. So we always are like, what is your adventure buddy? Show me a picture of your adventure buddy. And I took this to my son's class actually before we went to publish this, his second grade class. And it's really funny. I was very nervous. This is something where I've done a lot of work in my career. But I was just as nervous in front of second grade
Second
as I did in
graders.
front of boardrooms. So,
Yes.
and they had a really good, reaction to it. And the
Right.
thing that I thought was very cute is like in the book, she talks about like, I'll just show this here. And I was really I kind of laughed about parts that they would, maybe dwell on.
Right.
There's a part in the book where she talks about what she's going to pack.
Yes.
Right? And in the book, it basically says, Mr. Snuggles tried to put all of his toys in the suitcase, but everything kept falling out.
Yes.
He even tried sitting on top of it, but it wouldn't shut.
Which is such a thing a child would do.
Which is something that like even I as a adult can relate to. But
yes,
when I got to that point, the little kids were like, this is what I would pack, and this is what I like to pack. And it was just like this cute interaction. And then at the end of the story, it was so cute because they're like, are you going to write a story about here? Or will you write a story about here? And I just love that because I think back of when I grew up in a small town. It was a very small town in Colorado. And there wasn't a lot of, things around me per se, because it was a big country town.
Right.
We'd go through, the Encyclopedia Britannicas. And
yes.
I would there. And I remember doing book reports on Venice and all these places. And I remember being like, I want to visit there one day. And it is something where I think children, just like I mentioned, the historical buildings, like they're a part of a community. Children also want to feel like they belong somewhere. They feel they're part of a community and what they relate to. And for me personally, I didn't quite relate to necessarily the town I grew up in. And when I, got older and I started, exploring, I actually have a goal to visit all 50 states, and I have
Wonderful.
4
Yes, and I saw that beginning where it's so cute the way the states are, and so that would be fun for kids to be like, oh, here's where I've been.
Yes. And I've noticed like when I've traveled, there's different states that I've gone to that I didn't necessarily know much about, but then as I got there, I just related to like the culture, because each state can have a different culture, and you do feel a sense of belonging in these different places. And I think as kids explore the world around them, they get a bigger sense of belonging of who they are. They're like, oh, I like the beach more than the mountains, or vice versa. And why is that? And that's what this book series is about. It explores nature and geography and science. And, again, we add a little mischief in there.
Yeah, so fun. I just love that so much, that sense of belonging and that connection that children as individuals, they need and they want to make. And they might have that to their hometown and they might not. So the ability to explore and find that other places. Maybe they do have a connection growing up, but they might discover further connections that they might be able to build on. And isn't that beautiful and wonderful that even though you're happy where you are, you might be able to find additional adventures.
And like that's what I see, like even with my own children, there's parts where there could be parts that they love specifically about one thing, and then then we go visit cousins in another state and they like things about that. And it's cute to see, my son who's 8, and he'll say, when I'm older, I want a farm, but I want it near the beach. Things like that, where they mix and match the things that interest them. And so, for me, I definitely discovered that I was more of a city person as I got older. And I just remember reading a lot about cities growing up. For whatever reason, I didn't ever visit a big city, but for whatever reason, these books that I read opened my mind to these things. And I love that, just how books can do that. It just opens up your imagination, and you can, whether you actually go visit them in person, can open up your imagination to what possibilities are out there and what speaks to you. And even as a young age, you want to feel that you have a story to tell, and what you have, that sense of belonging of where that is.
Beautiful. And I love that travel journal going along with it. And so they can get started on that, of creating their own adventures. and discovering self. And, you know, for me, I always have dreamed of traveling when I was a child, and I've done a lot of travel in the States and out of the States, around the world. But when it comes back to, while I love to go see big cities, I'm actually the opposite of you. I love the country, and I love to be like, for my day-to-day life, I don't want anybody too close. Like, I love the individuals and I love the people, but like, I'm a rural girl. Like, I want to be in the country. And so but it was nothing that I realized as a child or a teen that was how I'd be. And so how fun to take these and discover and explore self and belonging and identity, and to be like, do you know what? This is okay to love this and to love this, that are very different things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
even myself, I noticed, because I actually worked in New York City for some times, and there were like, overall, I loved the experience, but there were times I'm like, I kind of miss the mountains now, and it is funny how you can belong lots of places.
yes.
I think
Beautiful.
that's also with the story that I'm telling, because my second book,
Yes.
it's going to be very different than this
Okay.
particular one. This one has a lot of nature in it and things like
Yes.
that. The other one, not as much, but you can see like just the amount of adventure that no matter where you go. And that's one thing, like I even do with my kids, like we just go to the park sometimes. I'm like,
Yeah.
what adventures can we find? Because if you
Wonderful.
explore the world around you, anything can be an adventure. And that's
Absolutely.
one thing I try to instill in my kids, is that even if, we might be bored, or like stay in the house when it's cold or too
Yes.
hot or whatever, like what adventure can we find? Because when you find adventure, you again get to kind of know yourself. And sometimes it pushes you to be a little bit more brave. It pushes you to be a little bit more, curious, all those different things
Yes.
that I think is important, especially to children. I think
Yeah.
that that's a really important thing to do.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Janilee. I love it. And so obviously, with having written a children's book, and having been the library volunteer, you must have some exposure to other books. Can you recommend another children's book for us that you love?
Yes. So one that I actually love, I found this a couple years ago. It is called The Invisible String,
Oh, okay.
and is Patrice Karst. And she
Okay.
is this, I love, you can kind of see what she does is basically say, if I'm not around, there's an invisible
Right.
string, like basically from my heart to you. And I
Oh,
think right
beautiful.
now, with kids, like especially right now going back to
Starting
school.
school. That's exactly
Yeah.
what I was thinking.
Yes. So I think going back to school, it has a lot to do with like, if they have separation anxiety or things like that, that's something that you can, tell them that I'm always there, even if you don't see me. So it's something that I started reading to my kids at a young age. And
Yes.
right before school, it's something that we tend to do. So we just did that as school just started.
Beautiful. Yeah, a lot of people use well, we just did Mama Llama Mrs. Mama at preschool. And then the kissing hand is another one. But I'm feeling like, because there's always when I taught sixth grade, I like to read picture books even to sixth graders, and so
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of beautiful, wonderful picture books out there that you can do for older audiences. And it's looking like without reading it, it's hard to say, but that could be one maybe for the older audiences that
Yes.
they're
Yeah.
like,
I mean,
well,
I think it
kissing hand just
ranges.
feels a little too young for me, but invisible string, I can feel a little more connection to as a 10-year-old or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Janilee. We're going to share all of the links below here in the
Okay.
description where you can find Janilee. So she'll get those sent over for us, and they'll all be there so you can click and find the books and this travel journal and any of her socials so that we can share and keep discovering. Maybe kids can
Yes,
also share their own.
one of the socials, which is fun, we started over the summer, is
Mhm.
the little kids would bring their own adventure buddy or their
Yay!
stuffies.
Yes.
And so we actually took Mr. Snuggles around Yellowstone and took pictures of places that are in the
How
book. So
fun.
that's launching soon. And we did like a hashtag adventure buddy so that little kids could see other little kids around
Yeah, so
that they
kids can
went
go
to.
share their own adventure buddies and get pictures
Yes.
too. Okay, beautiful. That'll be so fun. All right, well,
Yes.
thank you so much, Jenilee.
Well, thank you so much for having me.